The air hung heavy and humid, musty, like an old basement. Ahead, the gaping maw of the cave yawned, black and hungry.
No way, it's too creepy.
Chicken, scared?
Double dog dare you. The dare hung in the air, heavy as the humid air. Stacy felt a shiver crawl down her spine.
Fine!
She marched towards the cave, her flashlight beam dancing nervously in the darkness. Her 3 friends followed, their laughter echoing off the damp stone walls. The air grew colder, the darkness deeper. They ventured deeper into the belly of the beast. The cave narrowed, walls closing in, pressing against them. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, as the group squeezed through the tight passage. Each step forward felt like a battle against the encroaching darkness and the oppressive weight of the stone around them. Claustrophobia clawed at Stacy's throat. Her breaths came in short, panicked gasps, and her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. She could feel the walls closing in, threatening to crush her. Every sound seemed amplified, the echoes of their footsteps bouncing off the stone walls, creating a cacophony of noise that only heightened her anxiety. Then they stumbled into a vast cavern. The sudden openness was a stark contrast to the narrow passage they had just navigated. The ceiling soared high above them, disappearing into the shadows, and the walls stretched outwards, creating a sense of space that was both liberating and intimidating. Torches flickered to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The flickering light created an eerie atmosphere, the shadows seeming to move and shift as if they were alive. The group huddled together, their eyes darting around the cavern, trying to make sense of their surroundings. "Whoa!" The exclamation echoed through the cavern, bouncing off the walls and fading into the darkness. It was a mixture of awe and fear, a reaction to the sheer size and mystery of the place they had found themselves in. In the center of the cavern stood a stone tomb, intricately carved with grotesque figures. The carvings depicted scenes of torment and suffering, twisted faces frozen in eternal agony. The craftsmanship was both beautiful and horrifying, a testament to the skill and the dark imagination of whoever had created it. A shiver danced down Stacy's spine. This place felt ancient, forbidden. It was as if they had stumbled upon something that was never meant to be found, a relic of a time long past, shrouded in mystery and danger.
What is this place? The question hung in the air, unanswered. It was a question that had no easy answer, a mystery that seemed to grow deeper with every passing moment.
No one answered. An unnatural silence descended, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. The silence was heavy, oppressive, as if the very air around them was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Stacy ran her hand over the cold, rough stone of the tomb. It felt strangely alive. The stone was cool to the touch, but there was an energy to it, a sense of something ancient and powerful lying just beneath the surface. "Don't touch that!" The shout was filled with panic, a desperate plea to stop whatever was about to happen, but it was too late. The stone beneath Stacy's hand moved. A low rumble filled the cavern, the sound of ancient mechanisms coming to life after centuries of dormancy. A grinding sound echoed through the cavern as a section of the tomb slid open, revealing a dark, gaping hole. Dust and debris fell from the opening, the air filled with the musty scent of decay and age. A musty, ancient smell wafted from the opening, sending a chill down their spines. It was the smell of death and decay, a reminder of the tomb's true purpose. The air crackled with unseen energy. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being stretched and twisted, the boundaries between the living and the dead growing thin. The group stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the dark opening, their minds racing with fear and anticipation. What lay beyond that dark threshold? What secrets and dangers awaited them in the depths of the tomb? The answers were shrouded in darkness, waiting to be discovered. A whisper, barely audible, but it seemed to slither into their minds, coiling around their thoughts. Mark took a step closer, drawn by an unseen force.
What was that?
Stay back!
But her words seemed to evaporate in the thick air. The whisper grew louder, weaving itself into their minds, a hypnotic chant. Mark reached out, his hand disappearing into the impenetrable darkness. A cold dread gripped Stacy's heart. Then a shadow stirred within the tomb, a shapeless thing, darker than the surrounding darkness. It rose slowly, its form shifting and changing like smoke. The whispers intensified, slithering into their minds, planting seeds of darkness. Stacy wanted to scream, to run, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. Fear, cold and paralyzing, held her captive. Section 4. The Whispers. In the dead of night, the whispers began. Soft at first, like rustling leaves, they grew louder, filling the air with dread. A shadow flowed from the tomb, a river of darkness. The air grew colder, and the night seemed to hold its breath. It swirled around them, whispering their names, each syllable dripping with malice. The whispers seeped into their souls. A chorus of whispers promised power, but with an underlying threat, a sense of impending doom. Mark stood closest, eyes glazed, a vacant smile on his lips. He was in a trance under the spell of the whispers. Mark seemed enthralled, captivated by the whispers. He was powerless to resist. The whispers had a grip on him, tightening with every second. His mind was no longer his own.
Mark? Stacy's voice trembled with fear. She saw the change in him, his empty eyes, his hollow smile.
Stacy whispered, but Mark didn't react. He was lost, a puppet to the shadow's will. The whispers twisted his thoughts, turning them dark and unrecognizable. She reached out, but Josh pulled her back. He knew touching Mark could mean falling under the same spell. "It's okay, Stacy." Josh's voice was calm, but fear edged his words. The whispers could consume them all. "It's what we've been waiting for." The words only added to Stacy's fear. What had they unleashed? His eyes were distant, hollow. The whispers had taken something vital, leaving only darkness. Terror crashed over Stacy. The whispers closed in, their cold breath on her neck. She had to get away. The shadow twisted them, feeding on their fear, growing stronger. The whispers were changing them. She had to escape, but the whispers surrounded her, filling her mind with dark promises. If she didn't escape, she would be lost forever. Section 5. The Offering. This chapter delves into the heart of darkness, where shadows and fear intertwine, creating a tale that will haunt your dreams. The shadow solidified, taking on a vaguely humanoid form. It was as if the darkness itself had decided to take shape, to step out from the void and into the world of the living. Its eyes, two burning embers in the darkness, fixed on Stacy. These eyes were not just looking at her. They were piercing through her soul, unraveling her deepest fears. Terror threatened to consume her. Stacy could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the silence of the night. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body was frozen in place.
"Bring me more." The voice was a low guttural growl, reverberating through the air like a sinister command from the depths of hell. "Bring me those who doubt." The demand was clear, and it sent a shiver down Stacy's spine. She knew what it meant, and the thought of it filled her with dread.
Mark and Josh turned in unison, their eyes devoid of recognition, fixed on Stacy. It was as if they were no longer themselves, as if the darkness had taken over their minds. Their smiles were no longer human, stretched into grotesque parodies of joy. These were not the smiles of friends, but the twisted grins of puppets controlled by an unseen hand. They advanced towards her, their movements jerky and unnatural, their hands outstretched. It was like watching a nightmare come to life. Each step they took bringing them closer to her.
No! Stacy's voice broke through the silence, a desperate cry for help that seemed to fall on deaf ears.
Stacy stumbled back, fear choking her. She could feel the darkness closing in, suffocating her, making it hard to breathe. But her pleas were lost in the growing darkness. The shadows seemed to have a life of their own, moving and shifting, swallowing the light and leaving her in complete darkness. The shadow pulsed with an evil joy. It was as if it could sense her fear, feeding off it, growing stronger with each passing moment. The whispers intensified, urging Mark and Josh forward. These were not just any whispers. They were the voices of the damned, calling out from the abyss, guiding the boys towards their prey. Stacy was trapped, the darkness closing in. She could feel it pressing against her. A cold, unyielding force that left her with no escape. She was the offering, the sacrifice to appease the ancient evil. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks, the weight of it almost too much to bear, and she knew, with chilling certainty, that she wouldn't be the last. The darkness would continue to claim more victims, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The ancient evil had been awakened, and it demanded its due. The ancient symbols around her began to glow, casting an eerie light that only seemed to deepen the shadows. These were the marks of an old, forgotten ritual, one that had been performed countless times before. The other teenagers stood around her, their eyes glazed over, entranced by the ritual. They were no longer themselves, their minds lost to the ancient evil that controlled them. Tears streamed down Stacy's face as she realized the hopelessness of her situation. She was alone, surrounded by darkness, with no one to save her. The dark figure loomed over her, its presence overwhelming. It was ready to claim its offering, to take Stacy as its own. Stacy's final scream echoed through the darkness, a sound of pure terror that would haunt the night. Her face, frozen in a look of horror, was the last thing she saw before the darkness consumed her completely. And then there was nothing but darkness. The scene was swallowed whole, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to stretch on forever. The offering had been made, and the ancient evil was satisfied for now. The ancient book closed, the title, The Offering, visible on the cover. This was just one chapter in a long history of darkness and sacrifice, a tale that would continue to unfold as long as there were those who dared to doubt. The book was placed back on the dusty shelf, surrounded by other ominous titles. Each one held its own dark secrets, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to open their pages. To be continued. Section 6. The Revelation. As the darkness consumed Stacy, a chilling silence filled the tomb. But this was not the end. It was merely the beginning of a deeper, more sinister discovery. Mark and Josh, now free from the shadow's control, blinked in confusion. Stacy's scream had snapped them back to reality. They looked around, the eerie glow of the ancient symbols casting long shadows on the walls. Without a word, they began to explore the tomb, a sense of dread hanging heavy in the air. Their flashlights flickered, casting eerie patterns on the ancient stone walls. The air was thick with the scent of decay and centuries-old dust. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon a hidden door, partially concealed by a tapestry depicting a scene of ritual sacrifice. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow passage that seemed to lead further into the depths of the tomb. The passageway was lined with ancient artifacts, rusty swords, tattered scrolls, and pottery shards. Each item seemed to tell a story of a time long forgotten, a history steeped in blood and dark magic. At the end of the passage, they found a room. The air was colder here, and a sense of foreboding filled their hearts. In the center of the room stood an ornate pedestal, upon which lay a dusty ancient book. The cover was adorned with symbols similar to those they had seen before, glowing faintly in the dim light. Mark hesitated, but then reached out, his fingers trembling as he opened the book. The pages were brittle, filled with cryptic writings and illustrations of dark rituals. But it was the final page that held the most chilling revelation. The curse that had plagued them was not just a random act of malevolence. It was a cycle, a ritual that had been repeated for centuries, each time claiming new victims to feed the ancient evil. And Stacy was just the latest in a long line of sacrifices. The realization hit them hard. The curse was far from over, and the ancient evil would continue to demand its due. The room seemed to close in on them, the weight of their discovery pressing down like a physical force. They had to get out, to warn others, to break the cycle. But as they turned to leave, the shadows in the room seemed to come alive, whispering, mocking, and promising that the darkness was far from finished with them. The ancient evil had been awakened, and it would not rest until it had claimed all who dared to uncover its secrets. The tomb was not just a resting place for the dead, it was a trap, a prison for an evil that would never die. They ran, the whispers following them, echoing through the passageways, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just out of sight. The tomb had revealed its secrets, and now they had to face the consequences. As they emerged into the night, the cold air hit them like a slap. They were free, but the knowledge they carried was a heavy burden. The curse was real, and it was far from over. The ancient evil had marked them, and it would come for them, sooner or later. The tomb stood silent behind them, a dark sentinel guarding its secrets. But the revelation had been made, and the darkness was now a part of them. They could never escape it, just as Stacy could never escape her fate. The camera pans out, showing the tomb in the moonlight, a dark and foreboding presence. The night is still, but the air is thick with the promise of more horrors to come, to be continued. Chapter 7. The Escape. The chilling realization of the ancient evil's curse weighed heavily on Mark and Josh as they sprinted through the labyrinthine corridors of the tomb. Their hearts pounded in their chests, echoing the ancient symbols glowing ominously on the walls, pulsating with a sinister energy. Flickering torchlight cast eerie shadows, creating monstrous shapes that seemed to reach out for them. Ghostly apparitions appeared in the corridor, their faces twisted in agony, sending shivers down their spines. Skeletal hands emerged from the walls, trying to grab them, adding to their terror. Panic and desperation etched on their faces, they stumbled upon a hidden passage. With a mix of hope and fear, they squeezed through the narrow tunnel, cobwebs brushing against their skin. The tunnel led them to a large, ancient door covered in intricate carvings. Summoning all their strength, their muscles straining, they pushed it open, the creaking sound filling the air. Finally, the door revealed a moonlit forest outside, the cool air rushing in, offering a glimmer of hope in their harrowing escape. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. With their hearts pounding and breaths ragged, Mark and Josh burst into the inner sanctum of the tomb. The ancient stone walls loomed around them, covered in cryptic symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Every step they took echoed ominously, amplifying their fear. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own. It was as if the tomb itself was alive, watching their every move. Mark's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shapes on the walls, while Josh clutched his backpack tightly, feeling the weight of the ancient artifact they had discovered earlier. "We have to keep moving," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible over the oppressive silence. Josh nodded, his eyes wide with fear but filled with determination. They knew they had to confront the ancient evil that had been unleashed, the source of the nightmares plaguing their town. As they ventured further, the temperature dropped even more, and a low, haunting hum began to resonate through the corridors. The boys exchanged nervous glances, but pressed on, driven by a mix of courage and desperation. They could feel the presence of something powerful and malevolent ahead. Suddenly, they reached a massive chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. In the center stood a stone altar, surrounded by flickering torches that cast long, dancing shadows. The air was thick with the scent of ancient incense, and the hum grew louder, almost deafening. Mark and Josh approached the altar cautiously, their hearts racing. They could see a dark figure standing behind it, shrouded in shadows. The figure's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and a sinister smile spread across its face. The boys knew they were face to face with the ancient evil. "We've been expecting you!" the figure hissed, its voice echoing through the chamber. As the ancient evil revealed its true form, a monstrous entity of shadows and malice, the boys felt a wave of terror wash over them, but they mustered all their courage, knowing the fate of the world rested in their hands. The air grew thick with tension as the battle between good and evil reached its peak. The shadows danced around them, whispering dark secrets. Mark and Josh's determination grew stronger as they devised a plan to trap the evil back into the tomb. The ancient force was relentless, its power surging through the chamber. The boys knew they had to act quickly. With a final desperate push, they executed their plan, hoping to seal the ancient evil away forever. The confrontation intensified, the chamber shaking with the force of their struggle. Would they succeed, or would the nightmare continue? The fate of their town, and perhaps the world, hung in the balance. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. The children managed to escape the tomb, but the experience has left them changed forever. They must come to terms with what they have seen and the knowledge that the ancient evil is still out there, lurking in the shadows. "We made it out, but at what cost?" one child whispered, their voice trembling. "I can still feel its presence. It's not over. Not yet," another child murmured, eyes darting around nervously. As they walked away from the tomb, the weight of their ordeal settled heavily upon them, like a dark cloud. The once vibrant forest around them seemed muted, as if it too had witnessed the horrors within the tomb. The trees whispered secrets of ancient evils. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices trembling with fear and uncertainty, as if afraid the very air might betray them. One child clutched a small, mysterious artifact, a reminder of the terror they had faced, its surface cold and foreboding. Shadows seemed to move in the forest, as if the ancient evil was still watching them, its eyes glowing with malevolence. They couldn't shake the feeling that their nightmare was far from over, the tomb's entrance a gaping maw of darkness, promising more horrors to come. Years later, the children, now adults, returned to the tomb to put an end to the curse once and for all. They must face their past and the ancient evil that still haunts them. Years later, it's been haunting us our entire lives. We need to finish what we started. This time, we know what we're up against. We won't be caught off guard. The weight of their past hangs heavy, but this time, they are prepared. They carry with them knowledge, courage, and a resolve forged in the fires of their previous ordeal. We have to end this for ourselves and for everyone else. The ancient evil awaits, but this time the children, now adults, are ready to fight. The fate of their souls and the world rests on their shoulders. This ends now. Their return marks the end of an era, but also the beginning of peace. They have faced their fears and emerged victorious. The curse is broken, and they are finally free.